I would say if there's something else for the path here, I would say that being the best is obviously something everyone should strive for, but being the person that they want to call when they need something, you want to be somebody they want to be around. Like, first and foremost. And then can you deliver what they're asking you, That's really what it is. And I think that's super important for anybody who's aspiring to be anything. It's just like, when they think of that thing they need, are they going to call you for it?
Hey, I'm your host, Scott Savlov, and welcome to another episode of The Path Here. And with me today, the Potash twins. Guys, how are you?
Hey, Scott, thanks for having us.
We're so excited to be here.
Well, it's always interesting to ask you guys, where are you? Because, your careers, as we get into it a little bit, you're trained musicians, right? And then you're trained chefs. Not a lot of people can excel at two things, do television shows, do concerts. So then the correct question always is, where are you? Because you guys could be anywhere.
Yeah, well, right now we're at our house in Palm Springs, California, and I want to correct you on that. We are trained musicians, but we're not trained chefs. We are very, very avid home cooks that, what would you say? I wouldn't say trained, but above average for sure.
We take it seriously.
We do.
So I always, we met originally at a friend of ours, Bo McMillan's, Chef Bo Max.
Shout out to Bo.
It was so much fun in Arizona. And we were walking around tasting food together, and that's how we kind of got friendly and got to know each other a little bit. And it was fun. And to think about it that way, I think we're both the same. All three of us are in the same mindset that there's executive chefs, there's cooks, and then there are people that cook food at their home that are enthusiastic. Now, I am the person that cooks food at my house for my family, and that's my realm. I'm not trained to do anything beyond that. I could follow a recipe. But for you to say that you're not trained chefs, I applaud you because, again, a lot of people wouldn't know that based on the fact that you've cooked with so many great chefs. You've cooked with so many different types of people. One would assume that the two of you are trained as chefs.
Well, we're definitely absorbing what we're witnessing around us, depending on who we're with. But I would say, look at, whether it's music or whether it's food, it's mainly our creativity that drives the way we, are composing a dish or a song. And I think with food, we might not have the technicality that we do with our music, but that doesn't mean we're not applying the technique that we have with our music to our food. So I think we approach it the same way as an artist or artist/craftsman would approach food. So I could see definitely how you would think that, we would be trained chefs.
I want to add too, look, when you're performing on stage, there's a level of focus that you have. It's very, very, very funneled and specific. And I think that when you're cooking in a kitchen, the same kind of focus is sort of parallel and required. And I think that that's something that we've sort of figured out how to put in one medium into another.
And I think to add on to that, it's not just the focus, it's the focus that you have when you're either practicing music or you're cooking for yourself versus when you're performing for other people and then cooking and serving other people. So I think if you can retain this sort of level of focus for that and move it into when you're performing for others and when you're performing and cooking and serving other people, it's going to translate no matter what you do.
100%. So let's just talk a little bit about something. First of all, Adeev and Ezra have some biblical reference. How are you both named? You're identical twins. How did your parents derive at your names?
So our parents, our dad is from Omaha, Nebraska. Our mom is from Minneapolis, Minnesota. But they met in Israel. Both of them were living in Israel, in Jerusalem, and they met there. And then we were born in America, and they moved back shortly before we were born. But they've always had this close connection with Judaism and Israel. And I think that when they picked the names for us, that was sort of what they had in mind.
And Ezra means to help, and Adeev means kind-hearted.
So, that kind of bond. Now, when you guys, obviously as identical twins, would you say that you were mischievous?
I want to know where the
Twins
mischievous,
being
where that
originated.
Yeah,
from.
where that comes from, because I can't really put my finger on where that comes from, but it is a question we get asked all the time.
Yeah,
Because you look like you'd be mischievous guys.
Okay,
I don't know what that says.
well, first of all, I would say whatever.
Don't. I'm just messing with you.
No, it's hilarious. Like, we get this question a lot, and we always for something we get asked a lot, we always never really know how to respond or answer to it.
Right,
I would say the way we are now, we've always been this way, whether it was, on camera or, when we were like 4 or 5 years old. So I would say we're mischievous. I would say there are definitely moments in our life where we played being a twin to our advantage when it benefited us. And I would say at the
the height of our...
No. At the, discretion of were we going to get in trouble for doing it or not.
Right, yeah. I mean, weighing out the risk, of
course.
In
school, yes, certainly there were times where we were prepared to be identical twins, and use that to our advantage.
I'll give you some insight onto this. I think as far as twins go, we're the least mischievous people you could find. But when we were in high school, we definitely would, go into the bathroom and switch clothes, and then Dee would go take a test for me. That happened.
See, I'm jealous, because if I had a twin, that would have been the best to save me.
And we don't even we don't even think of that as wrong. We just think about it as the teacher should be paying more attention.
Right.
Yeah.
If we weren't twins, you'd know who we were. It's kind of on you.
Now, in hindsight, did you ever tell your teachers that you did that?
No, I don't know if we ever confronted them.
We have admitted it publicly several times. I would be surprised if they didn't hear about it. Yeah,
they're like somewhere you're going to get a letter, after this show.
Let's just say this: our high school diplomas have yet to be revoked.
So, tell me a little bit about growing up in Omaha. What was that experience like?
Omaha is one of the greatest anomalies to ever exist. It is a small, big city. Everyone gets it wrong that it's just cornfields and cows. Omaha, Nebraska is a really cool place to grow up because, especially as artists and aspiring artists, everybody comes and performs in Omaha, but there's not a lot of people. So we get all of these interactions that are extremely rare with so many different artists. And
how we got into the jazz world was we were really, really into playing trumpet and trombone in middle school and high school. And Wynton Marsalis was coming through town to perform, and we snuck backstage and went into his dressing room and played for him. And that interaction changed our lives forever. I mean, he gave us his cell phone number and said, "Call me when you're in New York, and I'll show you around."
And then he helped us with our college essays and helped us get into music schools in New York City. And if we wouldn't have done that, I don't know where we'd be today.
No, we couldn't have done that particular experience in Los Angeles and have had the connection we had and changed the course of our careers from that. I don't think that would have happened anywhere else.
Wow. What did your parents do?
My dad is currently the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Palm Springs. That's a recent thing.
Right.
But he's a Jewish professional, and my mom is the VP of Human Resources, or I don't know what the titles are, but she's in Human Resources for big companies. She used to be at Dell. She's at Gore-Tex now.
She mainly international HR.
Okay. So with their parenting of the two of you, how early did you start your affection for music?
Very early, I think. We always were...
We were always around music. Our mom's family is a very musical family. Okay. I don't know that I would give that necessarily the origin of where our interest began. Right. But our dad was a big jazz fan and always had Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Wynton on repeat. And that's definitely something that when we started playing music, it was something we identified with really quickly, just being trumpet players. And being oh, that's what a really good trumpet player is supposed to sound like. I wonder if I could ever get to even half that. And just having, playing in marching band is not very exciting. It's not something that you're oh, I can professionally do that, right, or I want to professionally do that. Right. So you're looking for these outlets of where are trumpet players that are working, that are professional, that make like a living playing that? What are they doing? What do they sound like? And is that something I can personally even get to? And then like I would say we were our music education in Nebraska was really outstanding, and we took full advantage of that. And then, you know, we would do like the Nebraska All-State Jazz, and then from there, you know, wanted to go to New York City and perform.
Yeah, but I mean, let's put it this way: when you met Winton, you guys were what, like 15, something
Yeah, like
like
14, 15, yeah.
Okay. At that time, also, when did you start performing for like Berkshire Hathaway?
About the same time.
So that was by invitation. So I would say when we started to take this seriously, like after we met Winton, he was like, you guys definitely have you definitely have chops. You definitely have like a chutzpah about you guys. You're going to make it. And here's how are you going to do it, basically. And when we started to like a light switch turned on, like, oh, well, could being professional start now?
Right.
And we were like, well, currently we're geographically in Omaha, Nebraska. Are there any opportunities for us here? Even though we were 14 or 15. And the biggest gig in town was playing for Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. And we sent an email, and we were just like, hi, we're Adeev and Ezra Potash. Like, we're jazz musicians. We're taking this seriously. Like, do you have any opportunities for us? And we get an email that's like, how about the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting?
And we did that like 5 years in a row.
And even when we moved to New York, they'd fly us back in to do that.
You're kidding
and we were
me.
just like, wow. Yeah, and we're just like, oh, we're playing for Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. And we're like, you know, freshmen in high school.
And the funny thing about that is when we were living in New York, going to Manhattan School of Music, our teachers would be like, why the heck is the richest man in the world bringing you in? He should be bringing me in. And it did the teachers, and it did kind of spark some animus for sure.
It's indicative also of an appreciation for the community and the town of Omaha for you guys, because that's like a community feel that they would reach back to their guys. So you were like homegrown, you're their guys, regardless of the success level, you're their guys. And to me, it's got to be an amazing an experience for you just to reflect on, you know, Warren Buffett. You know, like not a lot of people can walk down the street and Warren Buffett's like, hey boys, how you doing? With
the risk of sounding glib, we've been doing a lot of interviews of late, and the first things some of the people say are like that we're the pride and joy of Omaha, and I don't. Right. It just sounds weird to hear that, because I'll say, I mean, we love that we're from Omaha, and the amount of support that we get from Omaha is super inspiring to us. But hearing that from our perspective just sounds so misplaced.
Right. Well, but that's why you're humble about how you're doing. You're just wanting to elevate yourself. You decided to go to, like you said, school back east. Adeev, you went to SUNY, right? Mm-hmm. Initially. Yeah. And then Ezra, you were in the Manhattan School of Music. So was that the first time you guys really were separated?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just great, like, for thinking about that. Yeah. Fantastic question. So when we were discussing with Winton where we should go to school, we had already gotten into Berkeley our sophomore year of high school, and we had told him this, and he said, well, I'll be careful about maybe... He suggested that we go to New York City. Yeah. Because everything's happening in New York City.
Right. Especially jazz.
Especially jazz.
Right.
So we pivoted a little bit, and Winton is by far, in my opinion, the best trumpet player alive.
Or who has ever lived.
And he doesn't teach like at a college.
Right.
So the next best trumpet player on planet Earth is this guy named John Faddis, who's the protege of Dizzy Gillespie. And he had come to Omaha to perform and work with...
And sort of to recruit you, in a way.
In a way. And he and I were very similar types of players. And he said, I only take one student a year, and I want it to be you. Would you come here to SUNY Purchase? And I was like, yeah. Like.
And also Winton had suggested, don't go to the school, go to the teacher.
Right.
And so that happened at the right time, really.
For you, Dave, the teacher was at...
Dave Taylor, the biggest bass trombone player in the world, was like, basically same situation as, I have a spot for you if you want it. And I was like, yes, so I'll take it.
But getting back to my question, you guys were separated.
Yes.
Because I want to know, I mean, you get along so well, but to be separated, it had to be kind of hard because you counted.
It was weird.
Yeah.
It was like we lost our superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was
you
weird.
Counted, right? You counted on each other for so much going into that experience. Then you're there. But relatively, even though Purchase is, I mean, it's not New York City, but it's not that far away where you guys were able to still be able to spend time or break off and see each other.
I'll add that at this time we were in different schools, but we were playing with John Batiste like weekly. And so we were playing together a lot.
And that took a big toll on me because I was coming from essentially Westchester pretty much every day, which was about 40 minutes on the Metro North. So, like, I would have a full day of classes, then commute back to New York City, and then have to do some sort of performance. So it was, and that was pretty much every day for like 2 years until we started living together in the city.
But to go back to the path here, we were in school, but performing on the side. And we realized that the real education was in performing and not in the school setting. And so I like to say that our education came from playing with John Batiste rather than from the schools we came from. Because so much of what you learn as a musician is playing off of other musicians and picking up on what they know.
We equate it to stand-up comedy. Like, you're not going to be taught that. You're not going to, they might say, here's the theory behind why something's funny, but you're not funny until you're in front of people on stage and
making
they're laughing.
them laugh.
And they're laughing at what you're saying.
Totally.
So in music school, it was the same way. Here's all these things that, in our opinion, were retroactive or recreating why something worked, but it was not the application of that, even remotely. And we had a big problem with that because these people who were successful teachers, not necessarily applicants of this theory themselves, were telling us how something was or wasn't. And we were like, but wait, like, you're not on there doing that.
Right. You weren't on stage with us last Saturday night.
Right.
Yeah, as much as they would make it look like they were.
For the record, none of them knew who John Batiste was at the time, even after months and months of us saying, this is one of the greatest musicians of our time. You need to know who he is. Mm-hmm. And none of them knew who he was, and now look at him.
Right.
Like, what, album of the year at the Grammys?
Has an Oscar.
Totally.
Has an Oscar. Like, you're trying to tell me that we weren't on to that and that we were wrong in that position?
Right. Totally. So for you, the essence of your education, when did you make the determination, okay, let's try to get our own album going. Let's try to create the touring element for yourselves.
So somebody told us when you go to music school, you need something to show them that proves to them that you are actively, professionally doing this. And they said it needs to be your calling card. And in music, that's an album. So our first album, Twin Tuition, came out our senior year of high school with the preparedness that we were going to be in New York City the next year and needed something to show for it.
Right.
Because once we got to New York, everyone else was going to be at our level. They were going to be already like accepted to this music school. They were going to be as good as us at our instrument. But what's going to set us apart is actively being professional and having a thing.
And this was back before it was easy to kind of like put an album together. I mean, now you can record things at home. We couldn't do that then.
And then, this was 2012. I mean, it sounds like it wasn't that long ago, but it was. Like, we saved up a lot of money to be able to record that.
At a studio.
At a recording studio. Like, that nowadays, I mean, you could get away with that. I mean, it's nowhere near what the new album is.
But it was a live album with 5 people playing live, and it was one take of every song. Like, we didn't know how to do it any differently.
Right.
Did you guys write that originally yourselves?
Yeah. And then
rehearsed the whole band.
Fast forward after that, we learned a lot about how to make an album, but we didn't really know it from like a professional music executive kind of way. And I think it was our sophomore year in college, we connected with this guy Stevie Greenberg, who wrote and produced the song Funky Town, like the big song Funky Town.
Okay.
And he is kind of I did my thing, and I'm not getting back in the studio unless you really prove it to me. And we proved it to him, and he produced our next album, and it was eponymously named The Potash Twins. And we sat down and wrote things with him and worked on things with him. And that was the true education of recording an album, I would say.
Yes, because we're watching somebody who absolutely knows what they're talking about and has a track record of knowing what they're talking about and watching their process and applying it to our process. And that's just an education you can't find in a music school.
How do you then meet someone who's not necessarily a musician or known as a musician, Andrew Zimmern, this amazing storytelling celebrity chef? How does he enter your life?
Okay, so this is actually a perfect step in our chronological story. So picture this, we're in New York City, we're performing with John Batiste, we are doing the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, we're flying back to Omaha, we get asked to perform at a jazz club back in Omaha. We fly in, we do this gig, we see on our phones Andrew Zimmern is doing what is it?
A dinner or a speech or something?
And one of the sponsors of the event was the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, and we had done a lot of work with them, and we were just like, hey, like, if, we're performing tonight, we probably won't be able to make this thing, but if you can get us a seat at this table, like, if you can do this favor.
We love to rack Andrew's brain about
some stuff.
And and they respond and they're like, yeah, you're at his table. So we go to this thing, and we're at his table, and Andrew was immediately like, I need to know way more about you two. And we talked to him for 3 hours probably at this dinner, just us and him going back and forth, to the point where like the people paying him to be there are like, hey, can you stop talking to them because you're supposed to be here for this thing. And he was so fascinated with us and was like, next month is Thanksgiving. Will you guys come to my house for Thanksgiving? And we were like, oh, that's interesting. Like, is it going to be a big thing? And he's like, or actually, no, we go to it expecting it to be like, a big, like, 50-person Thanksgiving dinner. And we get to his house, which we brought, what did we get? Barney Greengrass.
Barney Greengrass from New York City. We went to Barney Greengrass and said, what's Andrew Zimmern's order? And they said, it's this. And we were like, can we buy it and bring it to Minneapolis for his Thanksgiving? And we get to his house, and there's nobody there. It's him, his wife, his son, and his Maisha's parents, and us two. And we're like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, what's going on here?
And he'd remembered that we told him that we had kept kosher. And we told him that we had a thing with our dad, that if we ever met him or Anthony Bourdain, that we could have, like, treif with him. And Andrew had remembered this, and when we got to his house for Thanksgiving, had Joe's stone crab, had a leg of Jamon Iberico, and a bunch of other, like,
grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers and just things that weren't kosher.
Yeah, I was going to say, Andrew Zimmern has to have, like, grasshoppers or have these, like eat the snail, but you have to have the shell. It's very tasty,
Exactly.
And it had to be something unusual. Let's put it that way.
Oh, and there was plenty of it. And looking back on it, I think this was, in a way, an audition or a test, because he had us try things we'd never had before and wanted to gauge our reactions to those things.
Right.
And we had tried these things and said, these grasshoppers taste exactly like dried soybeans. And we talk about eating dried soybeans. And then we'd have the Jamon Iberico and say, the only thing I can relate this to would be like smoked salmon or lox or something. And he was looking at our reactions and was like, would you guys ever do a show? And we're like, we're really getting our music career off the ground, and I really don't want to like pivot to something. And he was like, well, what if I sold it and came back to you and said, you have a show? And we were like,
well, and then he was like, I'm starting this production company basically to represent you for television. We're like, we don't even know we want to do that yet. Like, we want to do music. Like, that's what we're in New York doing. And then, like, a couple months later, he's like, I got you a show on Travel Channel. Like, will you say yes, please? And we're like, yeah, I guess let's go film this thing, in Charleston, South Carolina or whatever.
Is he a jazz enthusiast?
He's a music enthusiast.
He is a huge music lover. He can tell you can put any record on and he probably knows what it is.
And probably could tell you who's playing guitar and who's playing drums and whatnot.
He is a huge music nerd. And I just think we must have hit this like both passion intersection thing for him. and was like, oh my God, and they're kind of like me, and they're curious, and they're funny, and they're twins. Like, this is really, really interesting.
You guys had a show where you paired musicians and chefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was that created by Andrew, or did you create that?
Oh, we've created every show we've ever done, minus that Travel Channel one. The Beats and Bites on Bravo was us going to Andrew and saying, hey, really amazing musicians, like technical musicians.
They're traveling all over the world, and they know a lot about where to eat.
But they also have the same kind of, like, mindset that a lot of these, like, really, really good technical chefs do. I wonder what it would be like if we had dinner with them, all of them together, what that would be like. And he was like, that's a show, we're going to make that a show.
He was like, oh my God, I want to be at that table.
Right. And then we started filming that show, and we had Wynton Marsalis with Tom Colicchio, and we're like recanting our relationship with Wynton and our relationship with Tom, and they're talking about the technicality of being a instrumentalist and the technicality of being a chef, and that really struck a nerve with people.
And also, Wynton runs one of the world's most famous big bands, and Tom runs multiple hundreds of commercial kitchens.
Yeah.
So it's like, not only are they on the same parallel of with the craft and technicality, but they're also on like the biggest world stage and scale you could even imagine for either of them.
You guys know that I know at least one of the Marsalis is in Brantford.
Oh,
yeah,
Brantford's
so cool.
Yeah, I love Brantford.
And he's not short on opinions, nor is Wynton.
No,
yes,
of course
and
not.
nor are they shy on expressing that they know how to make things like jambalaya and all that kind of Creole food their way, and they'll let you know that they are, they are not trained chefs, but they're
from New Orleans. They know food.
There's something in the water in New Orleans that makes you the coolest person on planet Earth, and none of us have it because we're not from New Orleans. But there's something about that city that gives you that cool factor and that ability to do things that other people can't do.
Another guy that enters your life who's now done 2 different collabs with you is the actor Terry Crews.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about, from the average person, they know Terry Crews is this serious yet comedic actor, funny, he's done all kinds of different things. How does he enter your life, and how do you decide to collaborate with him?
We were both doing deals with the same company, and we were in town for
a meeting or something,
or whatever, and we were both in town. And they thought it would be easier if we all went to dinner together.
Right.
And when they told us, like, hey, is it okay if Terry and his wife Rebecca come to this dinner? We're like, hell yeah, that sounds amazing. And we were like, Andrew, we're going to dinner with Terry. And he's like, oh, can I come to that? And we're like, sure. If you get us into a good restaurant, you can have
if you make the reservations, you can come.
Right.
We have dinner with Terry and Rebecca. And
did you specify to Andrew no insects at this dinner?
No, that wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary.
Just
although Terry would be game for it.
The best thing ever was we were at a tapas restaurant, and never take Terry to a tapas restaurant because the food is not big enough to eat for him. He eats so much food, man.
He does intermittent fasting, and he'll just go through food. Like, we go out with him in LA, and we go to places, and he'll have 4 entrees. Nice. He eats a lot of food. He's a weightlifter, basically.
So just, if you're ever in the circumstance of at dinner with Terry Crews, don't go to a tapas restaurant.
Exactly.
Yeah, that I would think would be a tad challenging.
But to elaborate on our relationship with Terry is we've performed with a lot of amazing hip hop artists and a lot of EDM artists, and Terry and us have a mutual friend in Robert Glasper, who is, in my mind, the Miles Davis of our time. He is the first person, not the first person, but probably the most notable person to fuse jazz and hip-hop together. And Terry is a huge fan of Rob and is a good friend of Rob as well. And that was kind of our foray into our relationship with Terry, because we hit it off with him and his wife, and we were like, hey, when we're in LA, let's go do something with Rob. And we'd go to the studio together when Rob was...
No, the funny thing was, Rob would invite us to the recording studio, and Terry would be there, and we all got invites, but it wasn't like we didn't know that you were gonna go or you were gonna go.
So then we just started going together.
Yeah, so we started going together, and then we, Rob would have a big birthday party, and we'd all be there. So it's just one of those things where it's we didn't even know that this mutual friend was also, we were all going to be friends based off of that.
And Terry and his wife Rebecca are two of the most generous people put on planet Earth. Terry,
kind and very real,
very, very incredible, extremely talented, and
I know,
always there to help.
I want to say this to Scott because I know this is way cooler on Scott's end. That I know Frank Sinatra made you tuna, but Terry Crews did cook us buffalo steaks.
Hey,
that's true.
It's all the same. You're getting somebody cooking it that you were not expecting to be cooking you dinner.
We should be cooking for them.
I know.
Look, I can make a tuna sandwich, but to know Sinatra made me tuna sandwich, yeah.
You kind of ruined tuna sandwiches for me now because I'm going to have one and be like, well, I wonder how Sinatra made it. I'll never know.
And I will say this, I had Clint Eastwood make me a tuna sandwich as well.
So this is a thing now? This is a thing you do?
People would think that I'm like, like Charlie Tuna here or something.
No, Scott, the three of us need to do a show where we just get celebrities to make us tuna sandwiches.
Tuna sandwich.
And they all add like one special thing to it. I want to talk about the album though, too.
Yes, do that.
Well, we have a new album coming out May 3rd that we are so excited about. It's called Hornography. And we love plays on words, and I think that was particularly a fun one to come up with.
How hard was it to come, all kidding aside, did it pop in your head just say Hornography?
We were literally the first day in the studio.
Yeah, we get in the studio, and I'm like, Hornography. And everyone in the room was like, okay, yeah.
Hornography. Yeah,
that'll work.
The energy for Hornography is also a lot of collaborations.
Yeah.
So Terry has a collaborative effort. Tell me a little bit, for me, having listened to it, I would say to you, one of the songs that jumped at me was Higher. It caught me off guard when I'm listening, and I didn't know King Green. Okay, didn't know King Green, and I need you to tell me about that relationship and how that collaborative worked. But just to give you a base so people will understand how good this song, in my mind, again, it's a subjective way of doing things, right? What works for me, somebody else may have because you guys have a lot of diversity in this album. I love that song because it has like a hip hop flair to it. Tell me, how did you come up with King Green, and how did you guys decide, hey, let's take a chance and do a collaborative effort with hip hop?
So first and foremost, with this album in particular, after 2 years of COVID, the first thing we wanted to do was start collaborating with our friends again. Right. It was weird being musicians that didn't get to play with other musicians for 2 years. Like, it's weird. That's the one thing that drives you as an artist. So collaboration was at the forefront of Hornography. And the hip-hop element, as horn players, one of the greatest things that we get to do is we get to play with pretty much every style of music. And we have kind of a niche of being horn players for a lot of hip hop music in the last 5 years or so. And writing hip hop music is amazing. It's fun. It's something different that, horns get to take this forefront in. And with Hornography, one of the things we wanted to do was answer the question of what are horns and where do they fit in the modern musical landscape. And I think to do that and not include hip hop would be like a total travesty.
And how Higher happened particularly was we were working with our producer Prince Fox, who is one of the best producers
100%.
That we've ever encountered in LA, and of course we wanted to work with him on the album.
We've worked with so many producers, and Prince Fox, Sam Lassner, was one of those people that we worked with 4 or 5 years ago, and we're like, when we get to make our next album, we want to make it with that guy. Like, he knows what he's doing.
And he is so King Green is the feature on that track, and he's an incredible Haitian artist. And he's very good friends with our producer Sam, and Sam was just in the studio working on the song with us, and he's like, "This is for King Green," and we were like, "Let's do it." And I'm really happy that he did, because I think that it was such a complete thought for him to do it, and we're very happy with how it turned out.
For you, a complete different sound is with Corey Wong when you guys do Crypto Cowboy.
Yeah.
Now, again, Crypto Cowboy, it starts off, it's different. It's just a different sound for the two of you. But the compilation of that with Corey, I mean, makes it a great track. Tell me a little bit about that collaboration and how did you go to that path?
So Corey is, one of the most famous guitar players on planet Earth. I mean, he has Fender guitars named after him.
Right.
And
had a band called Wolfpack, very big group.
And years ago, Corey was our musical director. And we toured with him, and he produced the last album with us with Stevie Greenberg. So we've seen him grow into this huge, massive artist. And we were just like, look, we got to do something together again. And he was so excited to do this song. Mm-hmm. And Crypto Cowboy is one of the instrumental tracks on the song that we were like, we need to go for something that has never been done with trombone. Mm-hmm. And it's poppy, it's funky, it's kind of housey, and it's just something that has not been done. We wanted to make every single song something that horns were dying to be done and have never been done.
Right.
And that's why it's Hornography.
Right.
Exactly.
No, we wanted to make a statement with each song.
And it didn't matter what genre it was. Like we were like, this is something that is crying out for horns, and nobody's done that. And we wanted to pick every single thing, and every single song on the album is doing that. And with Corey in particular, his Prince rhythm guitar is something that is so hard to do, and no one can really do it well. And if there's one person doing it to the best of their ability, it is Corey Wong. And so just having him was a natural fit on that song. And he took it to a whole nother level.
May 3rd, it drops. The album itself, Hornography, drops. You guys are going on tour latter part of the summer?
Latter part of the summer, yeah. So check back in on our social media around then, and you'll hopefully we're playing in a city near you.
Yeah, and please pre-save the album. It's the link in our bio at Potash Twins on Instagram.
That the Potash Twins have dedicated this year towards their music. Does that mean next year you're reverting back to culinary?
We're always going back and forth between the two, and maybe more sustainably, we should just be doing both all the time. I don't know.
Either that, or you guys, because you're knowledgeable about Westerns. Okay, so maybe in the future on your path, we're going to see these two Omaha natives in a Western.
Oh, I think we'd be great Western villains, or like the part in the movie that is just laughable for some reason.
No. Our role in a Western is we're a part of the villain gang, but we're kind of like the comedic relief of the gang.
Like,
so like
we're the henchmen with a name.
Right, exactly.
We're definitely henchmen, but with a name.
So they go, here's these two henchmen, but one's got a trombone and one's got a trumpet?
We play around the campfire, we do the little tooting the horns around the campfire.
And if we have to go mariachi, we go mariachi. I don't know.
I totally get it. I understand. So that's part of your future, but all kidding aside, I mean, there's so many directions you two can go, whether it be to compose music for films or doing other things. Do you see limitations for yourselves?
We're always one of the things being an identical twin is we're kind of always in our comfort zone. So whatever we're doing, even if it's like the wildest thing you could think of, we're pretty like capable. Just the two of us. You mentioned doing music and scoring and stuff for film and television, and that's something this year that we've been really fortunate to like
do a lot of.
And we're having a blast kind of doing that. We did a couple of songs for RuPaul's Drag Race, and the RuPaul's Drag Race UK, and then John Legend's show, Sherman's Showcase, which is like this hilarious comedy
on
AMC, and maybe HBO or Hulu or one of those, about Soul Train. So obviously a big musical show, and he and Diallo and Bashir have asked us to do a bunch of music for that, and we've done like 2 or 3 for this new season as well. So that's been really fun, like kind of new thing for us.
So collaboration really is unlimited for you. There's not really no genre other than K-pop, maybe.
Hey, I mean, we do K-pop too, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, if it has horns in it, you know.
It works. Look, that's why your new album is called Hornography. As long as it's got horns, you guys are advocates for the success of horns and music everywhere.
Absolutely.
Adeev, Ezra, thank you so much for coming on the path here, visiting, sharing a little bit about yourselves. I think it's always fascinating with you because there's always a story. And there's always a story about like how you guys walk into you could be at a Denny's in like El Paso, and out of nowhere, like 2 other monster musicians walk in and you guys are now recording an album together. You guys seem to be able to find your destiny for your next project out of the blue, which is it's a gift. But I also think because you're both such likable, nice people, that it makes it a pleasure, because no one wants to be around an idiot. No one wants to be around a jerk. And then when they could be with you 2 guys, it makes work more play. That's why I asked you early on, were you mischievous? Because you guys play, you have fun, not necessarily bad way. You just have a lot of fun with whatever you do.
I would say if there's something else for the path here, you know, I would say that being the best is obviously something everyone should strive for, but being the person that they want to call when they need something, whether it's horns or it's, you know, something with cooking or television, you want to be somebody they want to be around. Like first and foremost. And then can you deliver what they're asking you, you know? That's really what it is. And I think that's super important for anybody who's aspiring to be anything. Is just like, when they think of that thing they need, are they going to call you for it?
Right. Well, they definitely have your number.
Yeah, I'd hope so at this point.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I know you guys have to go, but thank you so much for coming on the path here. And I look forward to seeing you boys soon.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to write us on thepathhere.com to have one of your questions featured on a future episode. You can follow me on Instagram @ScottSavlo. If you want to send us a tweet or follow us on Instagram, it's @thepathherepodcast. Hey, I'm Scott Savlov, and you've been listening to The Path Here.